Wendy Brigham, Local 121, Rocky. Nice to have you back to speak to us, Maude. I've heard you many times before. I have two questions, and one you just sort of spoke to a little bit at the end of your speech in regards to the Alberta tar sands or oil sands. We know the damage that has happened up there to wildlife and birds in particular. Do you know if there's any concern or any studies going on of the long-term impact on people that live up there, like, you know, things that leach into the soil from the water table and stuff like that, and concerns regarding cancer?
And did you have a second question?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
I'll take them both if you like.
Okay. And the other question was, under NAFTA, which has been in place for a number of years now and not likely to ever be revoked, for the Assembly, maybe I know the answer, but for the Assembly, under NAFTA, do the Americans or Mexicans or whatever have the right to buy our water? And where, can you, like, we know we live in a more of a desert climate in Alberta, except in the mountains, but provinces like Manitoba, where I grew up with lots of water, in Ontario as well, what is the situation like for them?
Okay, two wonderful questions. On the first, there are some fine people doing very important work in the tar sands. Dr. John O'Connor is one of them, who have sounded the alarm about the cancer clusters, particularly in children in Fort Chipewyan and the other First Nations communities. There's been some serious resistance on the part of the government here to do in-depth studies on the health effects of the tar sands, and there may be people in here who know about studies that have been done that haven't come my way, but I see pretty well everything on the tar sands, and there's been a conspiracy of silence, I think. I've been there several times and talked to people there, men who work up there who would never bring their families. They say it's not just within First Nations communities, it's, you breathe that air. I mean, if you're standing there, if you visited it, you can tell that it cannot be healthy to be breathing that air or drinking that water. You can just tell that it's not good. And I think we have to do some very serious studies. We've called for a moratorium on any new development of any kind and a full assessment by the federal and provincial governments on the health impacts and the ecosystem impacts of the current operations to date. But they're just going full steam ahead. They're prepared to move to a 5-fold increase, which will make the tar sands the greatest site of greenhouse gas emissions in the world if it does increase to the planned increase that they want. And they want to punch a hole through the Rockies and put a great big pipeline that will send the bitumen off down through a pipeline to the US, but by ship over to China as well. So, I mean, there's no end in sight to the plans they have, which is why when Prime Minister Harper went to Copenhagen for the climate summit in December, he was the only government not in the world, not only that had ratified, his government didn't, but Canada had ratified Kyoto and then backed out, but he was the only one to go predicting failure. Well, of course he wanted failure because he can't afford to say these standards have been set by the world and we won't stand with them. So and I want to warn you about something else in terms of health issues and in terms of water issues, and that's the gas fracking, the gas refracturing, which is massive exploration taking place in Alberta. The biggest one is in northeastern British Columbia right now. But that's where they take massive amounts of water and steam blast it into the rock and the methane and the coal beds, and then they horizontally move that water and it releases natural gas. But they put a real toxic mix, toxic witch's brew of toxins into the water because the chemical, and then it's a secret chemical code, we don't even know what's in it, created by Halliburton, the folks who brought us the war in Iraq. These chemicals in the water, so not only does it use a lot of water, it leaves behind massive amounts of polluted water in the groundwater. And there are 15 wells contaminated locally in Rosebud, Alberta, and a very brave woman up there who's brought the press in to see when she turns her tap on how when she lights her lighter, the tap turns on fire. So this is a huge health issue and absolutely unregulated in this province, absolutely unregulated across the country. In terms of NAFTA and the threat to water, the biggest threat to water in Alberta from NAFTA is not so much the export of water, but the fact that any company, energy company, agribusiness company, mining company, pulp and paper company that is from one of the other NAFTA countries, i.e. American in this case, if they are operating here and using a lot of water, using and abusing water, if you were to bring in new rules to say they had to stop doing that, they would have the right to financial compensation under Chapter 11 of NAFTA. Chapter 11 allows corporations to directly sue the government of another country if it changes the rules under which they started their investment regime. So we have a legal opinion from lawyers at York University that say that if Alberta were to move, for instance, in the tar sands, to limit the access to water that the companies have, they'd have to abide by it, but the American companies would have the right to sue for up to billions of dollars of compensation. So we're not giving up on NAFTA. We still want those reforms in NAFTA because they're very, very dangerous.